about people that looked down and stayed where they were. First oil well, Pennsylvania. It was scum. They put a board across the creek to skim off the foul-smelling oil that was bubbling up through these streams. And they were skimming it off so the cows could drink fresh water. And the farmers sold that stupid thing. Hello, Exxon. Seriously. And gold, you know, Sutter's Mill, that was a walk away. Engineer heard about it, went in there and looked a little bit differently than anybody else had looked at it, and found the largest gold mine in history. And he talks about this. Where you're standing, look down. So that was finally the title I chose for this morning, and now I want to get busy and share this information for you. Thank you, Scott, for calling this a transformational day, because it certainly is, I believe, for all of us. And Clayton, what you said about the, whatever they call it, recession, you're absolutely right. J. Abraham, one of the great business pundits, once said, you got to sell your way out of trouble. Sell your way out of trouble. Amen, indeed. Thank you, J. Abraham. So I got a couple of facts I want to give you. Number one is, Clayton, you call it follow-up failure, but I call it stay in touch. It's exactly the same thing. Great comedian of the 20s named Mae West had one of the best lines, and I'll bet you use it again and again. She said, out of sight is out of mind, and out of mind is out of money, honey. Is that ever true? Think how easy it is to slip off somebody's mind today. They're just bombarded by so much media, so much information, so much pressure. David Ogilvy, perhaps the greatest advertising mind in history, said repetition is the mother of top of mind. Listen to these little fancy words soaking into this infusion crew, realizing that's what they've done. They've taken the wisdom of the ages and focused on the marketplace that is desperate in need and is in fact the rejuvenating factor of our country, and provided a power tool to make it possible for all of us to have our dreams come true. God bless Infusion. I'm so proud of what you guys have done. There's a second law. There's a wonderful book. I obviously, you can tell I like to read. Anybody wants to give me one of those new Amazon jobs, I'll take it. There's a book called The 7 Laws of the Harvest. You'll hear me mention some of them. Many of us believe they came strict from Scripture, but they actually, some of them, most of them did not. They came from the Babylonian. When they first discovered that we could stop wandering and scavenging and grow a community and a life, it was nurturing. Feed the dirt, feed the plants, feed the animals, feed our lives, stay in one place. And in that writing, as these people, Babylonians, were the ones who created writing. And they were smart enough to write down what they call the 7 laws of the harvest. Law number 2 is you always harvest in a different season than you sow. Write that one down. There is no low-hanging fruit. You got to work for it. That's nature. That's God. That's what He taught us. It don't come easy. It don't come free. But we are smart enough to find the technology to do that. So I said 3 facts I want to cover today. Is the third one is that Infusionsoft truly is that cure. It truly is that dream come true for you and for me and for certainly for the team that built this and the team that's growing this. But look at this group today. Imagine what this is going to be like in 2 years or 5 years from now. You know, because you have unleashed the energy, the massive energy of this country. Scott, you used transformation, and I truly do believe that this is a manifestation of transformation. Something that could never have been. Small business having the capability to go anywhere in the world with their ideas and their dreams. That's transformational stuff. You can't go back. Imagine what's going to come out of this. So that's what this is all about. This is all about the almost miracle that we are sitting in this room today, finally, with the technology and the computers to use and the internet, and then the incredible tools and technology of the web-based server. I mean, this is just astounding times. I mean, it seems like because it's come so slow to us that we may just sort of think that's the way life is. But this is one of those aha days, I think, for all of us. This era, this period, this year, this time. We're going to become very wealthy, all of us. You know this engine we live in. It's not going to lay down. We'll get it in gear. But now look at the tools this entrepreneurial group has got. You can go hand-to-hand combat with anybody and win with anybody. I want to leave you two pieces that I discovered in that research. Number one was what seems to be the biggest malady in entrepreneurial world and also in corporate America, and it's simply this. I had a chance to meet the most famous life insurance salesman in history years ago. His name was Ben Feldman, dead now, most successful life insurance salesman according to recorded history. New York Life sold the first $1 million life insurance policy, sold the first $1 billion life insurance policy to some sheikh. I met him in an airport, and I had a chance to interview him on tape, and sweet, gentle, very shy man. He spoke in front of $1 Million Roundtable, largest conference in insurance. And he was so shy that he required they put a sheet up and put a spotlight on him so he was only in silhouette. They could not see him. Talk about shy. And yet he was the most successful insurance salesman in history. And he lived in a town called East Holstein, Wisconsin. 2,700 people. I said, this guy must have had the richest farmers on the planet. Imagine. I asked him, I said, what's the day in the life of an insurance salesman like today? Those are the words. I'll never forget him. He just immediately said, it's the relentless pursuit of low-hanging fruit. How many of you resonate with that one? You wake up every day and going, that's my job. Low-hanging fruit. And I'm telling you, from everything I've read, there really is no low-hanging fruit. There's opportunities we stumble in on. No low-hanging fruit. And so the difference between sales and marketing, I believe, is that. Marketing is more on the order of cultivating and growing an orchard that will feed for generations. Low-hanging fruit is feeding the mouth now. That's the difference between sales and marketing. And in small business, in an entrepreneurial world, we've never had the ability to talk about cultivating orchards. We were so busy keeping the wolves away from the door that we didn't have time to build systems. Most of us didn't have the brains to build the technology, but it's here now. So just think about that. The difference between what we were and what we will never be again is that we now have the farming equipment to cultivate lifetime relationships with perhaps the most significant people that we're ever going to have in our lifetime. I want to give you also some interesting news about low-hanging fruit, and this also came from that Intel research project that was 12 years long, 1,800,000 air miles, and over 500 focus groups with CEOs. You can imagine how much fun it is to get CEOs, especially entrepreneurial CEOs, to sit still and tell you what color pink they like. But I started asking them. I said, we heard a few of you talking about doubling your money, doubling your sales. And we started asking some of these audiences of CEOs, how'd you do it? Where did the money come from? Where did the sales come from? Where did the revenue come from? And it was astounding. I want to give you all 4 of them because they said there were 4 things that enriched them, that made them wealthy. Notice not one of these are strangers. We know them. Number 1 source of revenue for companies that woke up and put the tools in place to cultivate did hockey sticks. You know about the hockey stick? It's a venture capital term they use when a company, small company, does a 10 times growth in 1 year. 10 times average growth of the past 10 years in 1 year. Imagine trying to fund that one. 10 times growth. Imagine staffing just for that, facilities. We found over 70 companies during that research Small companies, entrepreneurial-sized companies that had done a hockey stick, had literally done 10 times growth in one period of a year. Invariably, it was because they adopted technology. Invariably. They found a tool that let them mechanize, as that marvelous inventor that woke up one morning, I believe in Israel, and he and his brother had migrated from Russia as farmers, and they were trying to farm the Russian way in Israel, and darn near starved their families to death, because you know what happens in the desert. When you spray water in the air, 90% of it evaporates before it gets back to the ground. And they were running out of water, and he said one day he woke up, 1955, he woke up in the morning and screamed at his brother, and he said, I got it, I got it. And he said, what? And he said, we're using hoses wrong. He said, what do you mean wrong? And he said, we're spraying this stuff up and throwing it all over the place. He said, why don't we bury the stupid hose and punch a hole in the hose where the plant goes? Now all we got to do is just drip the roots. We're going to drip the whole universe. Think about that. And bingo. It's like one of those experiences that you have, like the folks that figured out infusion must have had. So then I started asking, so what category? Where did you start going internally, going down deep rather than going out and wide and fast? And they said orphans. Orphans. You know what an orphan is in business terms? It's a customer that is too small for prime time sales activity. Got that? There's an interesting study on this. Princeton did it. They said that the average sales rep in the United States in business to business has a territory. Is that your experience? Sales reps hired usually has a territory? Sometimes the whole place is the territory, but they got a territory. But what was really interesting was that most salespeople in this study, it was done by a man in San Francisco named James Obermeyer, his company was purchased by Dun & Bradstreet, so you got to figure he's a pretty good researcher. But he figured this all out. He said that the real money came from long-term relationships. All of the major corporations have figured this out. They don't change accounts every 6 months. They don't change them every decade. So here were the 4 categories. I want to give them to you fast. Number 1 was orphans. All an orphan simply meant was that a sales rep on January 1st, just about every sales rep in the world gets a printout these days. Here's your territory. Here's your number 1 revenue producer. Here's your 150th. By the way, the average territory in the United States in business to business is 150 accounts. Why? Somebody figured out that's about how much revenue will come out of that many accounts that'll pay for your cost. And maybe give us a little profit. That's where it came from. So here's what they find out that salespeople do. They take that sheet that has their 150 accounts on it, and they run down with their finger to the 20th line, and they draw right across the line, a red line. Effectively, without any management or anybody's overview, simply orphaned 130 customers. And you attack a salesperson with that, and they'll go, oh, no, I'm all over those people. Right. Show me your call list. I'll show you where they work. They work that top 20. Average A-level customer requires approximately 8 hours of work by a sales rep every month. That doesn't mean they each get a day, but it means about 8 hours of work for each A-level count. How many days you got with 8 hours in them? That's where your 20 comes from, and that means that all those others down there, because we had no infusion, orphaned. So all they did was figure out long before this stuff came along, long before the frequent flyer program came along, they figured it out. They went out and hired some brilliant programmer and said, figure out a way to do what the airlines did for us. This is not a new concept. Everybody's dreamed of it. Many of you have benefited gloriously from it. So all they did was just simply put a new game in place. Because we're going to be in touch. But more than just bombarding them with message after message after message, we're going to send the right messages to the right people at the right time, all the time, in the right media, you know? We're going to do this. Talk about positive. So imagine what happens now when you increase the sales activity, the marketing activity on 90 new customers. I mean, and they already know you. They already like you. They just forgot about you. Second, and this is margin thin, how